There's some huge thing when it comes to making games where you have to sit in front of a panel of people, usually people who have money, or people who've been doing this for a really long time, and you have to say, here's my game, and here's why I think you should fund it, why I think you should make this game, right? Even small games can cost in the millions of dollars, and big games can cost a considerably larger amount. Hundreds of people can work on some AAA game, so you have to somehow convince somebody with money to spend a whole bunch of money to get no reward until 4 years or 6 years later when the game actually ships. So it's hard. It's super hard to do that. That's why we have, name of successful franchise plus some number. That's why most of the AAA games that you see are that. Okay, I've stood up here talking enough. Let's welcome our judges. They're going to come out here first. Come on out. Line them up. Let's give a big round of applause for our judges. They're taking time off of their busy, busy schedule. I'm going to hand the microphone to you, and they're going to each introduce themselves and what you do a little bit.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm CRYSTA Frost, and I was a student here a few years ago. I am a technical artist for 2K Games, specifically Visual Concepts Entertainment. So I do all kinds of things. I do rigging, I write tools, play with dynamics, all kinds of stuff. And I'm here to represent the art side of things.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm a designer at nWay Games. I also was here at the Academy with CRYSTA, actually. And I have been to pitch night before, but not on this side of it, which is really interesting. My day-to-day things, I live in spreadsheets. It's really where I live. I do a lot of live ops stuff, which is like events, tournaments, challenges, stuff like that, as well as special offers and a whole bunch of other stuff. We are a small company. But yes.
Hi, my name is Alice Ching. I am not affiliated. I'm the lead engineer at Funomena, working on the game Watam, which is, if any of you know Katamari, is Keita Takashi's new game. And I represent the engineering side. I'm also in a very small game studio, so apart from engineering, I also do a little bit of production and actually wrote lyrics for the first time in my life. So yeah, it's interesting.
Great, big round of applause. Thank you so much. If you will take your seats. Okay, so what's going to happen is one group is going to come up here, a very brave group, and they're going to stand here and introduce themselves. Then what they're going to do is pitch their game. They have about 5 minutes to do that. And if they go over, then, well, I yell at them. Then the judges are going to provide feedback, and then we'll open it up for questions for you guys, and then we do that 5 times. So that's the plan. All right, well, who's the first group that's going to come up? Come on up. Let's give them a big hand. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and introduce your team?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kentaro. I'm the game designer.
I'm Barney. I am Barney. I'm programmer.
Awesome. And we are here to introduce our game, Deadeye. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So first, what is Deadeye? Well, Deadeye is going to be an awesome, action-packed 2D action shooter with time-bending puzzle solving, as well as being set in the Wild West. So, who are you going to play in Deadeye? Well, you play William Knight right here, who is a disgraced sheriff who is out for revenge against the Rustlers gang, who recently just murdered his entire town, as well as his fiancée. So, right here, we're going to give you a short video to kind of give you an idea of what we envision the gameplay to be for this game. It is simulated, however, all of the sprites are in Unity right now. So we will be utilizing these same sprites for the final part of the game. Bam! 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 Whoop! Oh, a little early. Bam. 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 Geronimo! All right. Wasn't planning on that, but hopefully that gave you kind of an idea. So now I'm going to go ahead and go into a little bit more detail about the gameplay and explain what's going on exactly in that video. But first, let's give a little round of applause for our actors here, our hero, our varmint, and the dastardly villain. So the main idea that I want you guys to kind of envision as you play our game, or as you think about this game, is a bar fight. In bar fights, people are just all over the place, going everywhere, throwing things, bashing things, punching each other. It's just chaos, constant chaos. And that's what we want you to feel like as you're playing this game, is just being in this whirlwind of chaos as people just come rushing at you constantly. And also, we want you to be able to use all sorts of items and weapons to really solve what's going on, to like defeat all of your enemies. And that's what the slow-mo aspect of the game is. That's where the slow motion, the time bending, puzzle solving is that you have limited resources. You only have so many bullets in each of your guns. You only have so many chairs and bottles laying around in each level. So you have to really think about when to use each gun, each bullet, each item that's in each level. So a lot of the weapons are going to be based in the Wild West, as you can tell from the theme. We're looking at the Colt single-action revolver, the Peacemaker, the Winchester rifles, and other cool ones like the Black-Eyed Susan and the Old Betsy, which is the sawed-off shotgun. There's also going to be a whole bunch of melee weapons. So again, chairs, pitchforks, things that you can just bash people with. And to kind of give you some survival tips to help you plan out and defeat all of your enemies, we want to give you some things that you can do with the environment. So first thing to always remember is that the table is your best friend because he will always take a bullet for you. And don't let your awesome appearance and your awesome abilities get to your head. Instead, shoot chandeliers and let them drop on your enemies instead. And finally, when you finish that really awesome glass of whiskey, be sure to just throw it at your enemies so that you can get a refill. All right, so I'm going to go into some technical sides of the game. We are looking to have this be on the PC. We want the mouse to be a huge part of actually aiming your shots and whatnot. We are working in Unity, as I said before, as well as looking for this to be about a one-semester project. That one semester is about 4 months, as you all know. These are the goals that we plan to finish within that one semester. We want to make sure we have at least 3 fully playable levels, 10 weapons, 6 environments, those being like the tables and chairs. But the big thing we really want to focus on is animation, because this is a 2D game, and animation is really important, and it's what sells 2D games, at least in my opinion. So we want to really focus on that as well. Here are just some stretch goals, some extra things that we get enough people to kind of join our project if you guys are excited about this game just as much as we are. So more weapons, more items, and hopefully a mobile version. The kind of people that we're looking for are going to be these people right here, level designers, 2D artists, 2D animation, VFX, as well as scripters. The main ones we really want to focus on are level designers and animation. Like I said, animation is really important. It's what sells the game. Level designers is what makes the game really fun. So being able to balance out the number of weapons and items and how many enemies come in and when and where is really important as well for this game. Here's a quick reference board to kind of show off what influenced us and what inspired us to make this game. So obviously games like Red Dead Redemption, Deadbolt, My Friend Pedro, and Westworld for the theme. All right, so any questions?
Let's give him a big hand. So first what we want to do, in fact, here, I will give you guys my microphone so that there can be some back and forth. So feedback from the judges.
Sure. I think that I'm trying to kind of gear my feedback towards, art. I'll let everybody have their own respective categories here, but I think the art style is really fun. I think that 2D can definitely be a way to get things done a little faster, especially for a one-semester project. So I think that it's a great place to start. But that doesn't mean that your 2D doesn't have to be like as detailed and as fun as it is currently. So I think you've got like a really great art style going right now. So I really like that.
Thank you.
This looks really fun. First off, second, I hope you do the sound effects for the actual game. That was fantastic. It looks really nice. It looks very much like a bar fight from your little like short cinematic that you had, or not really cinematic, but preview, and things like that. Is that representative of a level that you're thinking of doing for one of the 3 levels?
Yes, exactly. We're looking to basically, hopefully, have a little bit more moments where enemies come in and more variety in the weapons that they can use. But ultimately, you always end up fighting some sort of main boss, like the big red beard guy.
I see. Okay, and I'll keep going. I guess I'll go around still.
Okay. Sure.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I am not an artist, but I think the art direction is fun. But one thing that I mainly was thinking about is how are you gonna deal with the physics?
It will be fake physics. Nothing will be real physics except for the human body. And yeah, physics is a big problem. We can do like recase and checkbox to instead of using the real physics.
Well, with the number of characters and how you want them to be dynamically falling down, because it seems like you have a lot of different kinds of interactions, I think you might want to like prototype that out earlier, because with the ragdolls and things moving around, that might be the most challenging part of this project, I think.
Okay, thank you. I will do that.
Do you have more things? Or?
I think so.
Okay. I lost my train of thought.
Bam, bam.
Yeah. Do you have other things? I had a question, but now I can't remember what it was. My brain. Oh, so something that actually struck me as a little interesting was your time-related puzzle kind of aspect to it, and how the slow motion I appreciate a lot because I do think it's important for something like this, especially when it's like all crazy and whatnot. However, do you think that that will become an issue in the fact that you want this crazy bar fight feel versus the kind of thinking process that you do need for a puzzle game?
Yeah, I think the slow motion itself is kind of give people aggressive feeling, and also I think slow motion. People can do his instinct to do whatever they want, and they will fail and find that this way doesn't work, and he will find another way. It's very obvious that for things you can use when you are aiming, or things you can interact is highlighted, and so player will finally find out a way to solve the puzzle.
And actually, to kind of add to that, I think the idea is that we're going to be kind of, I guess the video wasn't indicative of how much and how many enemies we're going to be kind of bombarding the player with. And also, I guess one thing that we should have mentioned is the player only can take like one shot. He's going to be very, very weak. So you're going to be constantly having that idea that you are overwhelmed anyways. So the slow-mo is to help slow things down a little bit so that you can start kind of collecting your thoughts and also start planning how you want to utilize the certain objects around the level and whatnot.
Would the slow motion be unlimited, or do you have like a timer? Do you need to like charge it up? Like, what have you thought about around that mechanic?
Whenever you are aiming, that you when you are able to when you are aiming, this time is slowed down. So not every time you can aim, because when you are doing something else, you can't aim. So the time won't slow down. But it is not limited.
Okay. Anything else?
So you were mentioning that there's a whole lot of different kind of objects you want to be able to interact with the system. Is there, do you have more thoughts on like how you're gonna make it easier to author those objects, or are you just gonna make each one of them special?
Every weapon is under a class, and every is a child class, and under the parent class, the parent weapon class, and there are also a range weapon class and a melee weapon class, and also throwable weapon class. I already done this system and designed the system for in the prototype game. Yeah.
Actually, I have one more question. Sorry. Movement. Is it like an endless runner?
No.
No. So you do have movement control.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. That's it.
All right, now we'll open it up to the audience. If you guys have any questions, there's a microphone right here. Come on up. Audience includes faculty. Hold on. Oh. Your microphone's not on. You can use my microphone. It died. You can use my microphone for this part, and then we'll get the thing replaced.
Sorry about that. Okay, Digital Lover online says, since they plan to move it to mobile, how would they alter the aiming mechanics since it's targeted for PC?
Oh, we are thinking about to make it even slower in mobile games. The slow mode will be even slower, and the player can drag the aim icon and to do the aiming part and in the slow motion, and so that will be give them possible to shoot accurately.
So yeah, essentially, the slow-mo is going to be a lot slower. You'll actually be able to aim the cursor with your finger. So kind of like that.
Great. Thank you. Low Poly Square asks, are you using a 2D rig system for animations?
Yeah, it's a 2D bone-based sprites system. Yeah, and using IK.
Hey guys, great pitch. I just got a question about the controls. So you have various object interactions. What if there was a table with the beer bottle? Do you click a same one button for all the interactions, or?
Oh, yeah. We are doing. You are going to have a button that can interact with all the environments, and you get another button for catching weapons, picking up weapons, and the nearest environment object will be highlighted that you are going to use it when you hit the button too.
Oh, so each interactive objects or each kind of actions will have their own separate buttons. So player will be like bashing a lot of buttons.
No, you using E for all the environmental interacting.
Yeah.
You're using Q for picking up all the items.
Oh, okay. Cool, thank you.
So since this is a game that's based a lot from what you said on your pitch, where it's kind of like a very low time to kill and kind of, like very easy to die, are there any kind of movement options at the player's disposal that they can utilize? Anything like a dodge roll or jumping or any kind of mechanics like that?
We are still kind of discussing what other added movement options there are. Currently, what we have is essentially a dodge roll and a duck. We're hoping to kind of implement a little bit more to make it a little bit more interesting, but with time constraints and a lot of stuff. But yeah.
Sure, thanks.
This will be the last question. So is the player in control of time bending? Georgia wants to know. And also, is there a limit to the time bending, like a cooldown or anything like that?
So the player does control the time ending, and essentially it's relegated to your shooting weapons. So you only can slow down time when you have a firearm of sorts. So again, because every firearm has limited ammo, you literally just drop all your weapons after you're done with use up all the ammo. So that is the limitation on how often you can use the slow down time mechanic.
Thank you.
Hello, great presentation. Question is, since your game is puzzle, how much freedom players gonna have to solving them? How much options you planning to have, or it's gonna be like one direct option to finish your level?
Player has a few choices. We're going to design the best choice for player, but there's a window that player can not using this this way, but can find their own way to solve the puzzle. Yeah, it's possible.
To kind of add to that, essentially, we do want to have it be intuitive for the player so that they can have various different ways, but there is going to be an efficient way of doing it because, again, it's all about using resources really properly. So,
Thanks.
Let's give a huge round of applause for the first pitch. Great job, guys. Thank you so much. All right, and now we're going to have another pitch come forward. Some very brave person is going to come forward to the downstage center area. Come on out. Let's give her a huge round of applause. Come on out. Please introduce yourself and what you are pitching.
Hi, my name is Sean, and I am a MFA student here. This is my first year, so I'm really excited. I have to apologize in advance because I had a cold, like during the weekend, so my voice might be not in the best position, but I'll try my best. So today I'm going to talk to you about a game called Hickory. And you can see there's a mouse and a lot of gears. We'll talk more into about that later. Next. So I hope everyone knows this song, Hickory Dickory Dock. But just in case someone doesn't know, I'm not going to sing it, but I'm going to tell you what it's about. It's about a mouse that climbs up a clock, and when the clock strikes, he'll run down again. And this basically sums up what the game is really about. But what does the mouse really do on the clock? And that's the question we're about to answer. So Hickory is a 3D side-scroller puzzle platform game. And basically, it revolves around a mouse with magical powers that can manipulate time. And he has to put on a task to climb up clock towers and fix the clock. And when he fixes the clock, he can restore time to the kingdoms. And we'll talk a little bit more about the world. Next, thank you. Okay, so Hickory's world is built upon miniature kingdoms that are made of gears. And these gears are connected to a central clock tower that is the heart of the kingdom. So if a clock tower were to stop moving, all of the gears will stop moving at once. So the kingdom will turn into a halt. You can imagine if the camera is moved upon gears and then, the clock stops and the camera will stop moving and all of this will be dead. Nobody can see us anymore. So it's probably something like that. Yeah. And that's where the mouse comes in. And this is our protagonist. He is Hickory, the mouse, and he has a magic pocket watch that can let him manipulate time. And with these abilities, he is able to traverse through the kingdom and go to the clock tower. Now, to talk a little bit about his background, next please. Yes. Hickory is from a fallen secret mice society that dedicated themselves to the craft of clockworks. So they basically maintain all the clock towers from these kingdoms. But there's a big decrease in their number, and Hickory is one of the last. So it's up to him to do what he has to do. And in his journey, he might meet some of his other friends that are also in this, the descendants of this society that is already lost. And he might get some help, or he'll just learn more about the story and the lore. Yeah. So next, we'll talk about the time and gear features that are for this game, because this game is built upon the kingdoms that are built upon gears, and the player will have the ability to use time. So that's basically the two factors that are most important to this game. And first, we'll talk about the time, which is the player will have abilities like rewind or slow down or stop, just the basics of everything you think about time can do. But he can't do it every time, so he has a limited gauge, so when he uses it, the gauge will decrease. And we'll have an example in the next slide. And this is also another important thing about this game is that when you use your abilities, you can only use it on gears. So if an environment is not attached to a gear, you can't move it at all. The puzzle elements will only be focused on gears. And as you can see, the mouse is using the gears to move the card backwards. And when he uses the rewind, his gauge will go down. Okay, next. So when your gauge goes to 0, of course, you won't be able to use abilities anymore. So you'll have to refill your gauge. And there are collectibles in the game called time fragments. So you'll be able to collect them on your journey. And once you collected them, you can use your abilities again. Hooray. And another collectible you can collect, next slide, yes, it's gear pieces. And these are essential to the last puzzle of the game, which is when you go up to the top of the clock and you have to fix the clock. These are the gear pieces you have to collect before then, so you can fix the clock in the end. Okay, now after we talk about the features, let's go into the gameplay. And for the gameplay, this is a basic flow. At the beginning, you will start at Hickory's base, which is like a hub world for the game, where you can equip your abilities and probably customize what your character looks like, and then you can prepare for the next level you want to choose. So after you're prepared, you can choose a level, and when you get into the level, you ultimately have to fix the clock, which is your ultimate mission. And after you finish your mission, you'll come back to the base and then decide what you want to do next. And this is an example from Little Big Planets. So if you all know Little Big Planets, they'll start from a pod, and they'll probably just have fun and do some strange stuff. And then they'll decide which level they want to go in. Yeah. So that's basically this part of the game. So, but what do you do after you get into a level? That's where the fun starts. So when you get into a level, they will basically break down into 3 phases. And the first phase is exploration. In this part, the player will have to find the clock tower and explore the kingdom around them. And this phase will basically focus on environmental puzzles. Like, for example, here, the mouse will have to rotate the ramp down so he can climb up. And this is also an essential part where the player will have to collect the gear pieces for the last puzzle. And now we go to the next phase, which is when the mouse finds the clock tower. And after they find the clock tower, they'll have to climb up and up and up until they reach the top. So in this part, basically, the level will be sorry. The level will be basically based on gear puzzles. And there will be like there will be different levels every time. So after you finish a gear puzzle, you'll go to the next level, and you finish another gear puzzle, you'll go to the next level. And for example here, it's like a maze inside a gear, so you have to rotate the gears to make sure where you have to go to get to the other side of the maze. Okay, now for the next part, which is also the phase 2, is when you reach the top. And this is the part where you have to fix the final clock puzzle. And as an example here, basically you just take the gear pieces you had and you put it in. And then you rotate the clock so like this place, you make it to strike 1, so the clock will be fixed. And once it's fixed, you'll have a story segment and probably gain a new ability, and we'll enter the next phase of the game. Okay. Time is running very fast. Okay. So at phase 3, basically, your main objective is to escape the tower, which is run away from the tower guardian, because you've fixed everything, and everything comes alive. And the tower will have a guardian that will also come alive and will see you as a threat, so he'll start chasing you down. And we'll see a brief example of how it works in the next, yes. So you can use different abilities also to interact with the boss. You can use the environment and like make the environment move to your favor, or you can use the guardian's gears, because the guardians are also made of gears. So you can use it to your advantage, and like this here, you stop the boss from swiping you, so you can run away. Okay, and last, we'll talk a little bit about how to be careful with your actions, because if you use the wrong ability at the wrong time, then probably it won't be in your favor, so be careful. Okay, so because I don't have a demo for my game, so this is a little bit inspiration board of what inspired me of what the game might look like. And for the character, Moss is a VR puzzle adventure game, which also features a mouse, and it's very cute. And the Tales of Despero, I think that's how you pronounce it. If I butchered it, I'm sorry. So the Tales of Despero also features a mouse that has like a needle as his weapon, and he can just go around the castle and save the world, something like that. So the character designs really like appeal to me for what I think Hickory will actually look like. And for the puzzle elements, Little Big Planet and Little Nightmares are really something I look forward into seeing in my game, which is kind of like you're this small person and you're in a really big, expansive world. Okay, and last, we'll talk a little bit about my goals. The target audience is probably for children because it's a charming game, and I wanted to make it more like a fantasy picture book style game. And the platform is for PC. Estimate project duration is probably 6 months, and the goal is to build the foundation for the game, which is probably the hub world and just one complete level with the 3 phases, like exploration and climbing the clock and coming down the clock again. And if we ever get to do it early, then of course we can build other levels, new abilities, and see if there are any post-level missions that we can work towards too. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Give her a big hand. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So now we're going to turn it over to our judges for feedback.
Well, first of all, I think this is an extremely well thought out idea. I mean, it's very clear that you've been kind of thinking about this for a very long time and you have answers to a lot of questions, and I think that's really amazing. But I would caution you that the scope of this seems very, very large for a 6-month project. I think that a hub world and a level with 3 parts with a boss included is a lot for what would probably be 1 semester and change. So maybe scope down a little bit and focus on 1 level or just a boss fight, because it really will. You'll find that it'll take a lot more time than you expected to just get a hold of one really good part of your game versus many parts that may end up not being as good because you're trying to fit it all in.
Okay.
Ditto. Yeah, I mean, first off, art is super cute. Your drawings were adorable.
Thank you.
But yeah, scope is one of the big things I see with this. Actually, as a quick question, when you say 1 complete level, what does that entail exactly?
That actually is the 3 phases of exploration and getting into the clock tower and, yes, the boss chase to the end. So that is the 1 complete level I envision that will be. But just to your concerns, it is actually bigger, probably bigger than I thought.
Yeah. My recommendation for you, as CRYSTA and I did a puzzle game when we were here. We got 3 puzzles done. Yeah. Stick to 3 puzzles, and make the boss your stretch goal, I think, because the puzzles, especially for time, is going to be a really interesting thing to see, and it's going to be something that will require just a lot of design brain power. So I would recommend focusing on that. Other than that, this looks super cute, and it looks like it'll be great.
Thank you.
So this does look really charming, but I have the same concern the rest of them do, which is the scope. Because from what it seems like with the puzzle part of things, the time is not really like the time like the previous pitch. It seems like it just controls forwards and backwards motion of the gears. And I really like that you've confined time to gears, because that makes it much simpler than time, in general. But I think you would probably hit a lot of hitches trying to make those puzzles feel good. And that's going to take a lot of time. And I won't be surprised if you only finish phase 2, which I think is probably the most interesting part to me, because that's probably the most puzzle heavy part for if depends on what you're aiming. Are you aiming to be like a puzzle game or more like a platformer, or?
It's more like a puzzle game. Yeah.
Then I would say look at your scope, pick out the parts that's more core to your puzzle part of things, and really work on making those good.
Okay.
I have to say, one of the first things that was a red flag for me at the beginning was you were talking about how you were going to be manipulating time, and you could rewind and you could fast forward and pause and stop, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a hard mechanic. And then you went into it more and you were like, oh, but it's only for the gears. I think that's a fantastic idea, and it's something that I feel is kind of unique, so I think that's a really big strong point for your game.
Okay, I really tried to make it simpler, because I did talk it to one of my teachers, and it is a very hard mechanic to get into, especially if you can move everything at once. So yeah, to really limit it down is really a key factor to how to make this game simpler and probably easier to achieve in such a short amount of time. Yeah.
I think the last thing I would recommend, having worked on a puzzle game, is iterate early. Often, fail, early, often. So yeah, when you're trying to make your game fun, remember not to be too hung up on like how good it looks, and make sure you get the puzzle feeling really good, and then throw the art at it.
Okay, thank you.
And now we'll open it up to any questions that we have from our studio audience. Anyone? We have a couple.
I think you have a great vision. For the first levels, you will have to scope it down, but keep what your vision, your really in-depth vision for the next levels. Try different ways. Like one thing is the Maid's an actual Steam premier location. There's also a hyper game o'clock tea in San Francisco once a month. Really good game developers who can support you. Of course, you have great resources here, but I think your vision, don't cut your vision down. Don't.
Okay.
Write it up in a game definition doc. It reminds me of when I first read stuff about like that whole Harry Potter thing, and I was like, this is super complex. But it changed the game. Be open, though, on the playable levels when you do alpha testing and beta. If users throw up on it, how you tell your story is not the same as what your story is. Be flexible on how the game mechanics actually work. I helped the Google sponsored and Samsung sponsored game incubator that was in San Francisco, and also investors from EA and others, and I've worked on some interesting things from the iPhone store. I help start the Google developers. So I would say to you, I've seen a lot of games that don't have this compelling story and good mechanics about how people play and what you're trying to do. Don't scrimp on that. Just be modular on letting parts of those game episodes be easy to play and see which ones people really react with. Because that's the part. Like some parts you love, they're going to be like, yeah. Some parts you really like, oh, that was nothing, and they're going to be like, I'm addicted to this. And be open to the one that makes every great game. The ecosystem. There's going to be some type of gold farming here. There's going to be some type of place where people give value to each other. Do like our guy Will Wright, who sponsors a Maid, and he's like, yeah, really? 40 million people downloaded the Creature Creator over the weekend? I'm just going to slap a PayPal on that and let them buy those, and I don't really care about charging for the other stuff once the game comes out later. So be open on the part that they love that you're like, okay?
Okay, thank you.
How many do you have?
2.
Yes, you can ask 2 questions.
Hey, Sean, thanks for the pitch. I'm wondering which members you're looking for. What's the team composition?
Oh, the team composition. Basically, I'm the game designer, so I'm really looking for people in art and in scripting or programming. Okay. So these are the people that I'm really missing in my team right now, because I'm just starting my semester, so I'm not that good in like any of those, so it would be a really big help. Okay. Yeah.
And second is like, so everyone was talking about the scope problem. If you had to like reduce one of the phases, you had like 3 phases or 4 phases in one level, what would you like kind of shrink down?
I'll probably shrink down the exploration level. Okay. Yeah, because I think the gear and time mechanics are really important in this game, so that's really featured in the clock tower part, and I think the boss chase is like a good addition to the game, so probably the exploration part I'll try to like scope it down a little bit more.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So for all the time mechanics you're conceptualizing, do you imagine each different mechanic interacting with each type of gear element differently? Like say if there's like that gear cart and it's going backwards and you use the rewind to make it go forward. If you used, say, like the slowdown on it, would you imagine being able to still solve the puzzle using alternative ways like that, or do you kind of design
I am envisioning something like you have 2 abilities at the same time, but you can probably only use one ability to go through the puzzle, but you can also use both abilities to go through the puzzle. It's kind of like a thing that I'm trying to figure if it's able to work. Like probably the character can only bring like 3 abilities into a level, but he can whatever abilities he chooses, he can solve all the puzzles, and that's something I'm looking to see if I can achieve. But if it's too hard, then probably we'll have to think of something else. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I have two questions online. The first one's a quick one. Sam K wants to know, will there be a progress tracker similar to Little Big Planet?
Oh, actually haven't thought about that, but it could be a good idea.
Okay, and Digital Lover wants to know, have you thought about using other clock mechanics for puzzles, such as pendulums or springs?
The first thought, because I was basically focused on gears, is to make it more simpler. But I think if we get the fundamentals in, and then we'll see if we can add anything new into the game. Yeah.
Great. Let's have a huge round of applause.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We have another pitch come in. We have 3 left. Come on out. Don't be shy. Go ahead and introduce yourself and introduce the pitch that you're going to be doing.
Hi, everyone. My name is BENITO, and I am not a game designer, but I am a 3D character artist, and I guess this is my game design, technically. So the game is called Safeguard. It is a chaotic forced co-op game, as my team would define it, and I would also say that it's a game that ruins friendships. So what is Safeguard? The game takes place during a monster outbreak in medieval times, and it's up to the members of the kingdom to defend their homes. So that's kind of like the storyline of behind Safeguard. As for inspiration, I'd say one of our biggest inspirations is a game called Overcooked. Who here is familiar with it? So for those of you who aren't familiar, Overcooked is a game where up to 4 players work together in order to generate food that is requested. Well, much like Overcooked, our game requires teamwork and communication amongst 2 character job types. So the first job type is the blacksmith. Now the blacksmith's job is to continuously generate weapons, much like you generate food in Overcooked. Which brings me to the second job, which is the guards. Now, the guards have to use those weapons and fight off enemies and prevent them from breaking through the checkpoints. But the thing is, the weapons have a durability, kind of like in Breath of the Wild. So, what do you do when you have no weapon? Scream for help? Possibly that should work because it is the blacksmith's job to deliver a brand new weapon to you. As for a little more into the gameplay, the level's laid out, so the number of checkpoints can vary between level to level, but for this example, there are 2. One thing that doesn't change is that every level will always have 2 blacksmiths and 2 guards. That's up to 4 players. And the blacksmiths will always spawn inside the forge. The forge is located within the final checkpoint, and the guards will spawn in front of the first checkpoint as the first and only line of defense against the enemies. The enemies will spawn at a distance away from the first checkpoint, but will also be spawning in waves. A little more about the gameplay. So weapon generation. Weapon generation will be a 3-step process. So for example, it'll be like ore to fire, fire to anvil, and finally into the water. Once that weapon is generated, they will have to use the current level's delivery system to get it to the guards. So once the guards do have the weapons, they must use them until they do break. But there will be a durability bar, so they will know right before it does happen. When it does break, they have 2 options. They could either go pick another one up if the blacksmith has one ready for them, or they can just run and panic until one is generated. And that's why it's really important for the players to communicate back and forth amongst each other. So we have really simplified the mechanics to our game, so it's a game that's really easy to pick up. So there's only a few controls. So you have your left joystick, which, like in most games, is your move. Then we have your right joystick, which controls the camera. Then the first button, no matter what job type you have, will be your grab and drop button. The second button will be your interact button. So if you're a blacksmith, that will help you interact with the sections inside the forge. And if you're a guard with a weapon in hand, that will be your attack. And that's pretty much it. There are no other buttons, which leaves us plenty of room for if we want to add other mechanics later on in the game. As for art direction, we're kind of going for a very simplistic, cartoony art style, one that can be really appealing towards families, so we're going more towards the family-friendly kind of direction. As for gameplay, I'd say our gameplay would be a combination between like Overcooked and Breath of the Wild and Dungeon Defenders, I'd say. So here's a gameplay video of what we did have done when we worked on it. It's just a little demo of what it could be. So there's a little bit of weapon generation. There's our awesome weapon delivery system. As for goals and scope, now we know some scopes can be pretty large. So for our game within that first semester, our scope is just to have a basic foundation for the game. So we'd be focusing on things like combat, weapon generation, animations, character interactions, and the network. Now, a broader scope, so if this were to continue beyond the first semester, this is kind of an idea of what you could see in Safeguard within the second and future on. So the levels will be segregated within areas, and some levels will have more than one weapon. So new weapon means a new process for that weapon. And why do we need more than one weapon? Well, there will be weapon-specific monsters, which means you will need a specific weapon to kill a specific monster. For example, you'll need a sword to kill a goblin and a hammer to kill a rock golem. But a sword cannot hurt a rock golem. So what else? Besides those things, in the future, we would also be adding new ways to deliver weapons. So, like minecarts, catapults, lifts, and possibly even attaching it to a pig. Who knows? As for target devices, we're kind of focusing more towards consoles, like the Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. Main reason for this is because we feel like our game would generally play better on controllers. We feel like it's a better experience that way. So there is a team. I am lead and 3D character artist. William Flamenco is our scripter and level designer who can't be here. Anthony Seaman is here. He's our 3D environmental artist. Joseph Sison's also here. He's our rigger and animator. We also have Catalina Fierman, who's our 3D environment artist. Austin Coffey is our music design. And Katharina Carney is our texture artist. So although there is a team, we are lacking some crucial people still in order to make this happen, make this work a lot smoother and faster. So we're lacking people like programmers, more scripters, a sound designer, and possibly a concept artist. As for what you would gain from joining this team, you gain and earn experience from working on a game with a team. I feel like that's really valuable because our team didn't know how to work together when we first started. And along with great work for your portfolios. I mean, you kind of need it in the school. So yeah, that was Safeguard, a chaotic forced co-op game. Has a strong core. It's family friendly, ruins friendships, and overall, it's just a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right, wonderful job. So now I'm going to turn it over to our panel of experts.
So clearly you've already got some stuff going on. I was curious about what you have working right now. We saw like a little demo. So weapon generation, a little bit of combat. What else is going on?
So what you saw in that video is kind of what we had done when we first started tampering with the idea for a class. What we are thinking is that we'd probably like scrap a lot of the code and restart if we did get like programmers and scripters, because programmers could focus more on the network kind of side of it, and scripters could focus more on gameplay. What you did see, it's kind of just a rough idea. For like, that's why we want like, as for our goal to just be like the basic foundation, not even a level. That way, if we could get those things working smoothly, because we did get them working when we worked on it, but it was really rough. So we just want that to work really smoothly and really well. That way, level like generation in the future would be really simple, since that foundation is already down.
And then I just had one kind of like, I suppose it's a game design question, but like if you, if your weapons all break and your like your blacksmith is like making more, do you have like some kind of little like melee that'll like keep you going for like a few seconds, or like do you just automatically die? Like what are the consequences for bad communication between players?
We haven't really thought too much about the consequence. I guess the consequence would be fail, which is why it's kind of like that forced cooperation. If you're not working together, there's no way you can possibly win. That's why I kind of separated. So there's 2 blacksmiths and 2 guards. So since if one's like kind of slacking on the generation, there's one that can help. Same thing with the guards.
Does that mean there has to be 4 people playing at once?
Ideally, that's what we first like started off with as a concept. There doesn't have to be 4 people playing at once, but that's kind of like how we thought it would work best. You could later on work on like AI, so if you have only 1 player, you can have just computers helping them out.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Hello. As someone who works on a PvP synchronous mobile fighting game, network is hard. It's really hard. So I'm wondering why you chose network versus local co-op.
Originally, the concept that when I first came up with the game, it was kind of local co-op. But our scripter, he just kept coming up with stuff, and he thought network would work better because it would give that players freedom to move around more. And since it is network, that means you just have your player on the screen, which then we added in like camera rotation, and it let us expand the level a lot more, since there's a lot more freedom to the player.
I had one more question, but I can't remember it.
I was going to ask that network question. So, apart from the network question, it does seem like everyone is seeing a different point of view of the map. Is that something you're going to use to like make it more interesting?
I'd say, yeah. The maps won't always just be straight out flat. The maps can change out later on, and it's kind of like learning the map, learning the environment, and kind of cooperating with your team. Later on, there'll be like round maps or just some crazy, really fun maps that will kind of just make it a lot more interesting.
Sorry. Yeah, I can't remember things these days. So something that is going to be super important for your game is this co-op feature, right? The ability to communicate to people, and you've already separated each player's kind of roles. But what's to stop someone from just like spam making whatever weapons and who cares what they say they need? Like, right, because I'm assuming it will be faster to generate a weapon than to use the weapon.
Well, weapons, the parts in the forge will have like timers, so there is still a time you have to wait. And weapons, I'd say the amount of time it would take to generate a weapon would be the same amount it would naturally take for it to break, hopefully. So if that works out, that would make the back and forth a lot smoother.
So since it's going to be networked versus like local co-op, how are you intending for your people to communicate with each other?
So we haven't really thought much about that part yet. Kind of just thought about creating the local, the network part of it. But we are still open to kind of moving it back to local if we needed to.
It may be a good idea for like, if you're doing this, you know, if you've got like 1 semester to work with for sure, it may be a good idea to just keep it local and have like 2 players at once or something. Or I don't know. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know how many controllers you can connect to a certain PC, like 4, yeah. You could still have like 4 players on a PC.
Yeah,
so.
just kind of like split screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if you're going to do split screen, you'll have to look into how much that costs in rendering. So you'll have to figure out, each frame that you probably can't do crazy things. So that's something to consider. And another thing is, I know you were saying that you're targeting consoles because you think it feels better on a controller. I do think a lot of games feel better on the controller, but people also play on PC with controllers nowadays. Mm-hmm. So it's something to consider because I don't know if I assume the first prototype is on PC. Is that what your goal is?
Yeah, we kind of did it on PC and kind of worked it so it only functions with a controller. So the game could be developed towards PC easily, I believe.
No, that's fine. It's more if you want to develop it into consoles, then the engine selection is really important. And also, it would take a lot more time than you think to develop on consoles.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, let's give him a big hand. Thank you so much. All right. We have 2 wonderful pitches left. Who's coming down here? What? Oh, questions. Oh, my God. I completely forgot about questions. Come back. Oh,
I was
how
hoping
embarrassing
I could get away
for
with
me.
that.
Taking questions from the audience. And for those of you who are asking questions from the audience, if you could speak up, because the online folks that we're streaming this to are having trouble hearing people.
All right, I'm representing online again. Georgia Haresh wants to know, is player performance tracked individually or as a team? Like, does everyone win or lose together?
It's tracked as a team, so it's either you win as a team or you all lose.
Okay, I'm going to sneak another one in here. Digital Lover wants to know, does the ore for creating weapons already exist, or do they have to search for it or harvest it, or how does that work?
How we first developed it, it already exists. If we were to get a little crazier later on, there'd be like harvesting and other fun ideas like that.
Great. And I'm going to sneak yet one more in here. Are you thinking open online multiplayer or just friends only? And Patricia Tier wants to know, if you can't get all 4 players in, how would that change the game? Like, can you play it with 3 players or 2 or something like that?
Well, the idea would be you would at least need it to be balanced. So if you can't get 4 players, you would at least need 2. 3 would just make it really unbalanced and really make one side a lot stronger than the other. As for more of the online stuff, I'd say it kind of, if it were to go the network path, it'd follow kind of the open online kind of side of it.
So you have the character interactions between the weapon smith and the Guardian. Are there any kind of direct ways that the Guardian can interact with the weaponsmith, or is it purely just they're relying on them to create the weapon? Is there anything that the Guardian can do for the weaponsmith in facilitating that process or anything like that?
We didn't really think in that direction too much yet. Facilitate, I'd say, I wouldn't say there'd be any way to facilitate, but later on, I guess there would be ways where they can mess with the blacksmiths and have players mess with each other that kind of add more towards that chaotic side of the game.
Cool, thanks.
Hey, Chris. Cool pitch, man. I got a question about difficulty ramp. How will the difficulties ramp? Will it ramp up as the time flows, or will it ramp by levels?
I'd say it'd ramp kind of a little bit of both. So there will be different areas. So like the first area will be the simplest, and as you go on, it'd get a little bit harder. So as the levels go on, it would get harder, and when you advance to a new area, they'd get a little bit harder, and just harder overall as you progress, I guess you could say.
Okay. One more question is that it seems like the blacksmith had multiple steps to make the weapons for the guard, whereas the guard is more like identifying target, hack and slash, and grab weapon. Is innately the blacksmith harder than the guard?
I wouldn't say that it's harder. For now, there is like more of a step process for the blacksmith, so they do have a little bit more things to do. But hopefully, as it goes on, we'll think of new features and new things to give each one to do, so it's a little bit more balanced in the workload kind of direction.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'm a little short. I'm gonna go ahead and just grab this. Awesome pitch, by the way. I'm always looking for new games to play with my girlfriend. I'm more of a hardcore gamer, so Overcooked, I was like, yes, this looks like a game that's similar. And yeah, so I love it. One of the things that I also would suggest is getting into PC, and not only because you have, multitude of cross-platform, but you can put a controller, obviously, on, let's see, on your laptop. But I would also suggest getting into, in the future, virtual reality. You have Oculus Go, Oculus Quest, which is the newest one, and that one actually is amazing. Definitely got a chance to test that out, but I would definitely suggest to move forward to that, because I don't know how much it costs to go on console, but if you're like, yeah, it's expensive, to develop that way, I would definitely go PC. Again, you get a broader range, and then, yeah, virtual reality, so look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Steam, that's another thing. Steam, yes, do it.
Thank you.
All right. Now we can give the round of applause. Very good. Yeah, dev kits are tens of thousands of dollars, so they're very expensive. All right. Now we have our fourth pitch. Come on up. All right, and please introduce yourself and your pitch.
Hi, so my name is Shane. I'm a first year majoring in concept art. All right, so my game is called My Name is Delilah. It'll be a survival horror game that goes back to the classics. So things like limited weapons and supplies, and running around a huge mansion with a bunch of locked doors and puzzles. So for the game, you'll play as a female character that you saw on the previous slide. Oh, sorry. The character doesn't remember anything except for falling asleep. So she regains consciousness in a dark forest and eventually comes across a large castle, which she'll have to explore, and also pursues a mysterious white figure. So, wait, hold on. So it'll have a gothic setting with a psychological story, taking influences from games like Silent Hill 2, the Clock Tower game series, and Rule of Rose. One thing I'd like to bring into this game that'll differentiate from past survival horror games is the use of black magic. And I don't mean like a black mage who can cast fire or ice, but just some spells or rituals that the character can use to exorcise a demon. So the game will be released on Steam for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It'll be controller supported, so that players can choose a controller of their preference. The game is mainly for retro gamers who like survival horror games, but it's also geared towards fans of horror in general, or people who like to play scary games with a strong storyline. So the game will use fixed camera angles and tank controls like most of the old survival horror games. The fixed camera angles gives the game a more cinematic feel, and it also helps build tension and mood. And the tank controls are, if you're not familiar with it, it's when the controls move relative to the playable character rather than the camera screen. So, for example, you can see on the GIF on the left, the player is able to continue moving forward even when the camera screen changes when you press the up button. The game will also use hiding spots, which the Clock Tower game series uses. So basically, there will be designated hiding spots, which you can use in order to drive away an enemy. So it won't be like most games when the enemy will stop detecting you once you're out of its sight. And so here, the enemy will keep on chasing after you room after room until you use one of these hiding spots. So part of my inspiration comes from Gothic and European horror films, most notably Dario Argento, an Italian film director, for his beautiful, dreamy, and surreal imagery. And these are some stills taken from his films, Inferno and Suspiria. So I'd like to create a similar atmosphere that's both dark and feels like you're in a dream, as the character in my game can't determine what's real or a dream. These are some inspiration for a Gothic setting. So there will be large dining halls, candles everywhere, roses, graveyards, and of course a large spooky castle. This was a prototype I made in Construct 2 for a class. Obviously, it won't be a platform game, but the first level I designed here shows how the game begins with the character waking up in a dark forest, and here she encounters the mysterious white figure for the first time, which you'll see appear several times throughout the game, and find out more about what connection she may have with the character. So for the completion of my game, it's pretty big, and it'll probably take like 2 to 4 years, but this is a breakdown of how the first semester will look like. So the main goal by the end of the semester is to complete the first chapter of the game. Some risks that will come across in the development, mostly concerns with time constraints. So things like designing all the rooms and making sure it feels like you're actually in a large castle, as well as giving each room a function. So like if there's an item in there or an event or a character to talk to. So setting up the camera angles for each room will also use up time, as well as setting up the trigger volumes for all the enemies and designating the hiding spots. And of course, a lack of contributors will also most likely extend the completion of the game. So far, I'm the only person on this project, as this is my own idea. So right now, I'm looking for any of these people listed up here who are interested in, or who want to gain experience working in a team, or would like to learn how to create a visually appealing game. So to wrap things up, the game title is, once again, her name is Delilah. It'll be a PS1 and PS2 era horror game with fixed angles and team controls. It'll have a Gothic setting and a psychological story. And one thing, I didn't have it up there, but one thing that I like to bring to this game that will differentiate from past survival horror games is the use of black magic, and it will be released on Steam for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And I hope to revive the survival horror classic, the classic survival horror genre, even if just a little, because I know there are a few people out there who would like to see it be brought back. Thank you for listening.
Let's give her a big round of applause. Great job. Okay, we now turn it over to our panel of judges.
Right. I think this is a really cool and spooky idea. I'm terrified of all things horror, so I'm not the target audience, but I think like these types of games have, you have so many like opportunities for dynamic moments, moments that you can really like take advantage of to evoke really strong feelings in your players. So I think this is a really cool genre to explore. I would say the biggest red flag for me is scope. I appreciate that you want to take like a really long time to make this a very fully fledged game, but you may not be afforded that opportunity necessarily. So it would be good to scope down for your first semester in hopes that you can like keep it going, and maybe just get like one level that feels really good and fleshed out. But otherwise, it's cool concept.
Thank you.
I like horror. So this is a really great aesthetic to me. To actually go a little bit off of what CRYSTA said is something I realized when I was doing a lot of collabs is one semester here is the equivalent of 1 week in like working hours. So when you put it like that, it's really hard to get a lot of stuff done in one semester. And something I saw on your proposed schedule was in second semester was when you were going to start putting things in an engine and actually like making things work. I highly suggest doing that. The sooner the better. Things will break, things will change, and if you have to go back and redo work, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, thanks.
So this really reminds me of one of my favorite games. I love horror too, which is Eternal Darkness on GameCube. If you haven't checked it out, because it has you keep talking about the black magic element. It has something kind of like that, and it's really a great game. So there's a couple of things I'm thinking about. One thing is you were mentioning there are enemies that will follow you from room to room. Have you thought about the kind of limits you would post on it? Like what happened if a player tagged like 20 enemies? Like, yeah.
Yeah, so about that, it might get kind of annoying if they follow you for too long. So I was thinking like maybe after you go through 3 rooms, they'll eventually disappear.
Okay. And then it seems like you're aiming for more a 3D game, or are you looking for more like because PS1, PS2 era, like, or are you looking for more 2D aesthetics but in 3D? Like, what are you looking for?
That's still neat. I can like it can still be either way, but I think 3D would be nice.
Okay, I think that really depends on the people you get to join your team and how you scope it out. But 2D and 3D in engine is very different, and how you set it up is very different. Like when you talk about the camera, that is like 2 different things in these settings. So it might be something to experiment with or to settle on, like, earlier. Then that's better.
All right, thanks.
On the note of kind of like the 2D versus 3D, I think like for this concept, I think either could work as long as you like, pick something at the beginning and stick with it, like Alice said. But also, I feel like even if you decided to go with 3D, like you are kind of like doing a throwback to these like PS2 games. Like you could get away with pretty like, not low quality graphics, but like lower poly stuff, and still like have your texture maps be a little bit more like elaborate or whatever, but you could get away with doing like a little bit simpler and really throwing it back, really doing something slightly more sophisticated, but still keeping it pretty simple. So you can have fun with that.
Yeah, thanks.
I forgot to ask about the black magic. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I was actually still thinking about that, but so for like using rituals, I was thinking maybe there'll be like specific rooms you can use to perform a ritual, and also there'll be like some items required to perform the ritual. So things like chalk or candle and a specific object that's related to the demon that you can use to exercise it.
Thank you.
All right, let's give her oh, no, I almost did it again. Good God, I'm terrible at this. Let's open it up to the audience for any questions that you might have.
I think it's good advice, but I also think that maybe you build out some basic playable like tutorial early for people into the game, because they're going to go through it, and I think you really are interested in how the black magic or exercising. It may not be black, but it may be against defense against the dark arts type thing. That could be a playable way to get people into it. Like you do a little level there, and then out of that they have to learn a certain thing to be able to go in the quest or whatever. That's a good way to kind of emphasize the part that you really seem into. And I think it's interesting. There's a place for that. A lot of games really don't show you. They give you the ability to do that, but they don't show you what you have to know and the elements you have to have in a way that's compelling. What are some of the other classics games you want to pull from as homages that you really feel like have elements of that really done well?
So from what I remember, the Clock Tower 3 uses, I remember a certain item that will deflect the enemy for a while, but it doesn't necessarily kill it. So I was thinking maybe I would do something like that where just something similar where you can use certain items only to kill the enemy. Yeah.
Maybe have a cool when it's like dead or like you're banishing it.
Hi Shen, thanks for the pitch. I'm just curious. It seems like what you have over there to wrap up, it's more, to me, it looks more like pillars, game pillars. Can you give me a game hook of the game, like the unique selling point of the game again? Can you just reiterate that for me?
So I'm a concept artist, so the selling point would be the art and just the whole visuals and everything.
Of like a classic survival horror?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
just enjoying like all the environments as you play, because that's what I feel when I play survival horror games.
So maybe like you're gonna have a lot of immersiveness going on, right? Like the game's gonna be very immersive horror.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. One more question is, how smart is the enemy?
So I'm not like much of a game designer, so I haven't really thought about that, but basically I think for now they just mostly follow you and just attack you. But I'm not sure, or I haven't really thought about like any other like specific things the enemy will do yet.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Just to piggyback on what you were saying about the graphics, because this game somewhat reminds me of Resident Evil, the original. I'm even thinking about Amnesia, and even getting into something that's obviously a shooter, CSGO. Like that game is extremely, oh my God, the graphics are ridiculous. But if anyone here is familiar with esports, they definitely make a lot of money with that. So I would go off of what you were saying as well. Like, not saying that you can't have the best graphics, but if you can just have a really good concept, a really good story, the community will see that and they're like, we don't care what it looks like. Is the storyline good? Am I legitimately scared? Do I have to think about how to get past this monster that's going to chase me for 3 or 4 rooms? So yeah, I would just focus on just getting a good storyline because we'll forgive anything else.
Thanks. Yeah, and I agree with you on that.
All right, time for online questions. Digital Lover wants to know, how will the horror be presented? For example, jump scares, psychological, grotesque.
I was thinking more of the atmosphere only so far, but for sure you'll see some like really twisted stuff that you'll see like in horror movies, for like Dario Argento that I listed, for example.
Sure. Great. People also want to know about the enemies. What would the enemies be? Have you thought about it? How many enemies? Are there like a lot of enemies, or just a few that are keep chasing you? Or
so far I thought about like making the enemies like be manifestations of the characters of demons from the character's mind. So they'll look a bit like human, but just kind of like morphed up or twisted.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's give her a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. We have one last pitch. Pitch number 5, which is coming to us right now.
Hey everyone. So stay a while and listen. How many of you have ever played Pokemon or had a digital pet? All right, so quite a few. Awesome. You know, as humans, it's in our nature to care for animals, and through technology, even digital ones. So my name is Shannon Lucier. I'm a visual developer and currently participating in collabs as a producer. And tonight I want to present to you Battle Pet's Journey. So in 2011, Blizzard introduced a pet battling system in World of Warcraft Mists of Pandaria. It became so popular in the Warcraft community that it was a talking point at this year's Con Before the Storm panel. Specifically, they were saying that fans really want to get a mobile RPG that's not just a Pokemon clone. So this brings me to Battle Pet Journeys, which is a third-person fantasy adventure RPG where you are a hero tasked with traveling through a portal to a new world where you find and train creatures to add to your pet collection. You build your settlement, meet natives, all while challenging enemies. It begins with the hero, who is commissioned by a gnome engineer to go on a perilous journey to a new world. The Mimic Isles in Uberos, to save creatures from annihilation by the hands of interdimensional beings entering through rifts in fabric of space and time. The hero is aided by their employers and their new allies that she meets along the way. The hero and the pet battles together against enemies, and acquired pets, after getting cloned at the Gnome Workshop, are able to engage in pet battles. The Mimic Isle consists of 4 zones. The Lazuli Forest, it consists of 4 zones. The Lazuli Forest, Viceland, Breathing Sands, and Surama. The hero will start their adventure at the base camp. The story is linear, and our hero will move from zone to zone via themed transportation. Each zone will have 4 races, 2 friendly, 2 hostile, of which there is 1 in per zone. At the completion of each zone, there will be a master pet battle in which our hero acquires an epic elemental pet. These will be crucial towards the end of the game. So here we have an example of what an epic pet would be. So we have a polar bear who would be in Viceland. And then you have a capturable pet like this cute little penguin. And this pet would be cloned at the Gnome Workshop. Each zone will increase in technological sophistication before getting to the final area in Surama. So, there lives a diverse group of 4 alien races whom the hero will get their technology which they need to repair the broken portal. Before our hero leaves, a large tear in the space-time fabric allows for a boss to come through with creatures of his own. The hero must face the final boss and minions before they can journey home. The gameplay and the art style are inspired by World of Warcraft, Diablo, and Tai Chi Panda. For those of you not familiar with the World of Warcraft Battle Pets or Tai Chi Panda, here's an example of the gameplay. So, Battle Pet's Journey is a story-driven fantasy adventure RPG for mobile. The targeted platforms will be iOS and Android, which will be delivered through the App Store and through the Google Play Store, with a targeted rating of teen. So for the first semester, I'd like to get the game development document worked out pre-viz. Cinematics are very important. It's very story-driven. As I'm visual development, so art is very important to me. So this, again, story-driven, so art will be a focus. Sound design, and then by the end of the first semester, I'd like for there to be a first playable and a slice where you can kind of just go through the whole game, at least with one pet. By the second semester, I'd like there to be a first pass by midterms, and then by final and alpha. And then by the third semester, there should be a beta that's able to go out. So, when I say Blizzard approved, I've discussed this I've discussed the potential of this development with a PMO manager and several artists at Blizzard who discussed the legal boundaries with me. So they're totally fine with this game getting made. They consider it a tribute to Blizzard, as long as I don't get any money from it. So, who would benefit from this? We want, or I want anyone who is interested in the painterly, whimsical art style of World of Warcraft and Diablo. I would like people who are interested in cinematics, storyboarding, also our programmers and our game developers who are interested in developing for apps, mobile apps, and understanding how that process works in submission. All right, so again, Battle Pet's Journey is a mobile fantasy adventure RPG offering a unique story-driven game filled with plenty of hack and slash with mobs, pet battles, and a stylized fantasy world. One more? Scott. Jesus. Question.
Yay! All right. And so for our judges' round of feedback, here we are.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your pitch. This seems very well thought out. You've got a lot going on. I love the music and everything. Yeah, I think the one of the red flags for me here is scope. Like the gameplay you were showing had a lot of different elements. It had like battles. There were cards. There's a whole world that you're interested in fabricating, and you're saying by the end of this first semester you want to be able to go through the entire game with one pet. And I feel like it may be good to, for the first semester, if you want something that's playable, maybe to just focus on like your first zone, or like maybe like 1 to 2 pets there rather than kind of an entire progression. Take things slower than you think you would want to. That would be my first piece of advice.
Again, ditto. Yeah, it'll take a long time. Another thing that is really interesting to me is like you are very art focused, which is fantastic. Like the aesthetics is great. But something like this, an MMO, or I don't know if it's MMO. No. Okay, but either way, it's an RPG, and I saw in your little preview of the gameplay from Battle Pets both JRPG kind of turn based as well as free roaming like Kingdom Hearts kind of. I'm going to run around and smack you with my stick. Mm-hmm. Are you going to have both? Is I guess the question.
So basically what will happen is the focus is you capture the pets. So it'd be more like the first thing you saw where it's turn-based between pet battles. Mm-hmm. So that the hero can enjoy themselves, and for the RPG part, you would be roaming around similar to Diablo. So in Diablo, you roam through and then you fight enemies as they come up. So that would be, you'd have a limited set of abilities, but it should still feel fun. And you can craft weapons, and each weapon has different, looks different when you're using it. So you're fighting enemies, and your pets can attack the enemies too. That would not be turn-based. What is turn-based is the actual pet battle.
I see. Okay. That's a lot of systems, just so you know. But, I mean, it sounds like a great game. And I caution against having so many features and systems, because that is going to take a lot of balancing. It's going to take a lot of combat balancing and a systems designer to figure out how everything grows and make sure power curve is not a huge issue, because it will be.
Okay.
So you're saying that there's no online element of this, right? It's just...
I would prefer, as also because of time, I would like for it to be just single player on a mobile device.
Okay, that makes sense. And I really like the world building of this game. I am wondering, are you going to focus on the pets or the hero's journey?
It's actually both. I shouldn't say it's mainly. It's both. The hero, the kind of person that would play this game, likes doing pet battles. So the idea of gathering these pets from the various areas, and there was a lot more that I could say about it because I have the whole thing written out. But it's each area that you go into, you meet people, you collect pets, and at the end of each zone, you basically get an elemental pet, which is one of those epic pets that you can use.
So there's a lot of elements, just like the other judges have talked about. Like there's your personal adventures in collecting pets. There's a lot of systems. So I would say something you should consider is figuring out one system you want to focus on to start with. You can always add the other systems and all that, but pick something that feels more close to your concept and start on that. For example, you were saying that your first playable, you want to have one pet with the hero to go through the whole world, right? But from what you're telling me just now, you want to have a lot of pets. I'm not sure. I feel like there's a little conflict over there.
So the idea is you only get about, I think it's 5 elemental pets. So these are the main pets. All the other ones are just because you like collecting pets. So they're pets that would be roaming, and then the idea is you're taking them back to the gnome to get them cloned. Because in the story, essentially the portal that this gnome creates is causing the rifts, and then these creatures are coming through and destroying the animal life. So she has to actually clone them to kind of save them and repopulate. So that was the idea behind that. But I do get what you're saying. I don't want it to be like when you're doing the final battle with the boss, you're only using the elementals.
I see. Okay. So you have special pets and...
Yeah, those 5 special elemental pets that you get at the end of each zone are the ones that would fight with you with the boss.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we now are going to open it up to questions from our audience. Are there any questions? SB, of course.
Hello, thank you for the pitch. You had 4 universe or 4 zones.
Yes.
And each of them were not just one room, so it's not an open world, it's more of a linear.
Yes.
How will you connect the worlds?
So each world is connected via a themed transportation and kind of the map that I build. So let's say, for instance, you're in the sand area, the breathing sands, and you need to get back to Viceland. You'd basically take a gondola. So there's only one way up, one way down. So it is a linear path that would go through. And of course, the art is there, so it looks kind of like open world, but it's not.
So it's kind of like how Diablo, you have entrance and exit?
Exactly.
Okay, that's clear. Yeah, that'll be my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, we got a lot of questions about pets. Okay, Digital Lover wants to know, how many pets would you say you're planning to put in?
Oh goodness, I had that in the longer slide pitch. I think it's about 12 per zone. It's about 12 per zone. And there would be a lot of them, but there's a max to how many you can actually carry. So you have your 5 elementals, but you can't get thousands of pets. It'd probably be capped at 200 normal pets or less. Okay. I have to work out the math on that, but there is a cap.
Okay. Someone was asking about that as well. Patricia wants to know, where do you keep your pets, and how many can you bring with you at a time? Are all 200 in your backpack, or how does that work?
Essentially, yes. Similar to how WoW actually deals with the battle pets. All of your pets are available to you. You have to keep them alive. So if you send them out to battle, there are other elements, like there's an inn in each town, and you can get supplies to heal them, so you can keep going. But you can keep all the pets on you. There was another part to that question?
I think you'd answered that. So Digital Liver also wants to know, is there any sort of battle triangle mechanic, like rock, paper, scissors type mechanics, elements, fire beats water, that kind of thing?
Yes. So I do actually want to kind of follow the same idea that they currently have in place for battle pets, which is there are certain creatures that are have an advantage over others. And then, of course, how you pair them up when you fight. It's chance. And you only have about 4 abilities per type of pet.
Okay. Sounds a little Pokemon-like,
It is,
right?
it is.
Okay, gotcha. There's still more. So what would be the focus for the first pet for the vertical slice that you were planning?
So in one of the slides, we had and I will come up with a better name, but for now, it's the Fire Fox. It's the cute little fox that she meets in the Lazuli Forest as soon as she exits the base camp and starts her adventure. This creature defends her in a cinematic and ends up becoming her first pet. So no, you don't have to do anything more than just start playing to get that pet, but that's like your starter pet.
That was from Kieran, by the way. And then we have, I think this is the last question. Georgia Haresh wants to know, is there any economy for pets? Can you trade them? Do they have a value system? I think that's it.
Okay, I may not have mentioned it. As far as economy and trading and stuff, because it's not multiplayer, that wouldn't exist. The exciting part that exists is when you collect a pet and you take it to the gnome to get it cloned, it basically, out of the little gumball machine, gets a pet for her, so she takes 2, and you get 1, which has randomly generated attributes. So it could be epic, it could be fast, it could be, be like a tank. So any of those things could occur after you get it cloned.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, big round of applause. And so what we want to do now is we want to have kind of a final parting thoughts from the judges. Can we get all of the pictures up here once again? And any parting thoughts, any final thoughts that the 3 of you have about life or game development in general, philosophy?
42. That's the answer to the question of life. I think the biggest takeaway, and this is often the biggest takeaway of pitch night, is scope. Remember to scope for the time that you have. I participated in pitch night. I won. I got 2 semesters for my game. So that was like really awesome, and I'm really glad I was able to do that. But, my first semester, I had 18 students in the class. My second semester, I had like 10. So it was a very big jump. So you never know what you're going to be able to get. All the brightest students are all being asked to be in many collabs, so remember to keep that stuff in mind, and really try to utilize the people you have at the time that you have them, and listen to your teachers. They know what's going on, they've been around the block. Yeah.
Again, ditto. Sorry. But yeah, scope is important. And to kind of build off of that, start really, really small. Like, I can't tell you how many different collabs, how many other, not even class projects I've worked on where everyone's like, oh, I want to do this and this and this and this. And you're just like, and I look back now and go, oh. Start super small. Find the very little kind of central nugget of what you want to do, be it aesthetics, a specific system, what have you, and really figure that out. And actually, if you've ever seen, Don't Starve, they've got a great talk about being spiky. Highly recommend it. You should watch it. And yeah, be spiky. Do that one thing that you really think, this is my game. Do that. Do it really good, and everything else, you'll figure it out. It's fine.
Yeah, coming from an engineering perspective, since there's not a lot of engineers over here, I would say engineering time is best used if you focus on one system at a time, unless you have multiple engineers, but then they might fight. But anyway, that doesn't limit, that isn't limited to gameplay system. Maybe you want to focus really on the aesthetics, and that means getting someone who knows about rendering and shaders, and that can take a long time to make. But if that gets the feel, then it might be easier to have other people just script, the other things out of the way. So just focus on one thing, because I've seen a lot of really great pitches today, but they're all like we've mentioned before, there's a lot of scope, there's a lot of things going on. So what is the thing of your game? What do you really, really want to make out of that whole world, right? If you have to throw away everything else.
I want to add one more thing. Sorry. Make concessions. Things will not always go exactly the way you want. One game I worked on, we had 30 people team. I had to manage 6 sound people. There was me and one other designer and one programmer, and everyone else was an artist. It was hard. Games are hard. But yeah, make concessions. Things will not go the way you want all the time, and that's okay. That's basically it.
All right, one big last gigantic round of applause for everyone who was brave enough to come up here today. Thank you so much for coming.